Hello. I woke up this morning at 4:45. My 3-year-old has a bad cough, and so she was coughing, called me in, and I comforted her, gave her some mixture, and she went back to sleep, which was more than I did. A few hours later, I was trying to convince her that she knew how to put her own vest and T-shirt on, knowing full well that I have to help her become self-sufficient, but at the same time knowing how much faster it would be if I could just get on and put them on for her myself. After breakfast, the much-loved carer comes, only she isn't so much loved this morning, and my daughter says, "Why do you have to go to work? Please stay." And then when I finally convince her that I do have to go, but I will be coming back, she goes across the room, picks up her favorite sparkly pen, and gives it to me and says, "Daddy, you can take this to the office, but bring it back later." I share this story not because it's in any way unusual, but it is the norm that millions of people went through something like this morning before they went to work. My name is Octavius Black. I'm CEO of Parent Gym, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar on working parents, why bother? Before we talk about the why, I'd like to talk a bit about the who. And the who starts with how many of the people who work are parents. And the answer is, very simply, a third. Now, that's a significant part of most workforces. It may be slightly less if you're in a tech city or Silicon Valley, and maybe slightly more elsewhere. But it's still a large portion of people at work. Now, something very interesting happens when people move from those on the left-hand side of the screen, workers without children, to those on the right-hand side of the screen, workers with children. Engagement falls by up to 20%. This is larger for women than it is for men, but it's significant for both sexes, and it continues for up to 5 years. So the very same people doing the very same work in the same environment suddenly become significantly less engaged. But it's not only engagement that suffers, it's also performance. We know that surgeons make 22% more errors when they're tired. 52% of managers say they've made mistakes because they lack sleep. And yet we know only too well as parents that one thing we don't get enough of is sleep. If you don't sleep for 5 hours consecutively for 5 nights in a row, your decision making is as good as if you were drunk. If only one was drunk, but will have much the same effect on one's ability to make good decisions as a working parent. So we know that it's stressful being a parent. We know that if we're not helping mend a grazed knee or stop a fight breaking out or tidying up toys, we're busy worrying. Am I being a good parent? Should I have taken my daughter with her cough to A&E this morning? Maybe it's pneumonia. Maybe some catastrophe will occur because I wasn't caring enough. Why hasn't my child got any friends at school? What does the head want to talk to me about? And perhaps most pernicious of all, am I turning into my mother or father? Now, these are common worries and concerns of being a parent. They go with the territory. But there's a new kind of stress that also occurs for parents who work. And this, psychologists have diagnosed as role combination stress. And it takes many forms. For example, 90% of working parents find balancing work and parenting stressful. Not just occasionally, but 40% feel constantly torn between the two. At every moment of the day, pretty much, they're worrying that they should be doing one rather than the other. 87% say that the competing demands of work and family life actually directly impacts on their performance, and the research shows it probably does. And in a survey of all women, not just those who are mothers, found that 72% were conflicted in their ability to balance family and career. So this parenting lark is challenging, but it's even more challenging if we're also working. The research also shows that our well-being in one domain of our life, be it work or home, has a direct impact on the other. The link is stronger from work to home, so if work is going really well, we are more likely to have happy, contented relationships at home and to enjoy our home life. But it works the other way too, and there's a correlation in both directions. So getting this right has a big impact on not only on our overall well-being, but also on our performance in our job. Now, employers aren't stupid. They've known this for a while, and along with governments, have done various things to try and make it better for working parents. There's maternity and paternity policies. Some companies have introduced a crash, and many have flexible working programs. But the question is, what difference do these make? An interesting study was done in the States on 644 adult workers. Just over 200 were working fathers, about 280 were married working mothers, and then the rest were single working mothers. And what they were interested in was there any correlation between having a flexible working program and feeling that parent self-report feeling of well-being? And what they found was there was no correlation. There was a slight correlation with the sense or the feeling that my company is willing to be flexible, but no actual correlation with the policies itself. Perhaps more interesting is, where was there a link? There were two things that signified people who felt better as parent employees than those that didn't. And the first was having coping strategies, ways of solving the day-to-day challenges and problems of being a parent. And the second was what psychologists call self-efficacy, that sense that I am a good enough parent. And if I'm a good enough parent, then I can live with that, and I feel a sense of self-confidence, and my level of stress starts to dissipate. Now, it's understandable that HR leaders and directors would feel nervous about telling people how to be a good parent or what being a good parent is. There's nothing more worrying than challenging to identity than being told you're not a good enough mother or you're failing as a father. And why would employers want to take the risk of upsetting and disengaging so many more employees, those already more disengaged as we've seen, by taking that risk? And the answer lies in the science, in the research that's been done, particularly in the last 25 years, on the consequences of different parenting behavior and what impact that has on a child and their life chances. So, for example, we know that teenagers whose parents read to them during their first year of school have a 6 months ahead in their reading age by the time they reach 15. We know from research done by the Clinton Foundation that children from families where the parents, one or other parent is in a professional job, have 30 million more words addressed to them by the age of 5 than those where that is not the case. We also know that the function of having these extra words addressed to you increases the child's fluency and literacy. It's not just in words and reading where this matters. Having a consistent bedtime routine increases the chances of the child sleeping well and consistently through the night, and therefore that their parents will as well. We also know that the descriptive praise, where we describe what we see a child doing, I see you've painted a red stripe and a yellow circle, has a very positive effect on childhood behaviors, much more so, for example, than saying, gosh, you're creative or artistic. A child knows how to repeat the yellow circle or the red line. They don't necessarily know what else they need to do to get the positive stroke of being artistic or creative in the future. And so we start to see that there's a body of research that works out on a large research samples about what makes a difference, but also has practical tools and techniques, ones that do not cost them any money, but which allow parents to make conscious decisions about things they can do differently, which help them build stronger relationships with their children and help their children flourish. Now, this can deliver big results in society. There's extensive research that shows that exam results, this is a study of 10,000 teenagers in the US, that the biggest effect on exam results was supportive parenting. More than the school, more than the curriculum, more than the head teacher, more than the quality of the teachers. It was the supportive nature of the parenting that made most difference. There's further studies on the risk of criminal behavior and antisocial behavior. What they did in this particular study was they trained parents on how to deal with problem behaviors, and they found there was a causal reduction in antisocial behavior as a result. We know that secure parental attachment leads to children being more popular and better social skills. We know that the quality of a parent-child relationship directly corresponds with the quality of peer and romantic relationships in later life. We've also seen, and with the case with you, but my mother always used to say standards are slipping, and my father used to bemoan the youth of today. Well, if they were around now, they would have no cause to do either. In fact, the youth of today are better behaved than they've ever been. The chart you'll see on the right shows that the proportion of younger people taking drugs has pretty much halved. In the UK, the proportion of young people who are first-time offenders is down by 59%, and youth crime is down by 47%. Teenage pregnancy is at an all-time low since records began. Now, you could argue there are many reasons why this might be the case. But one thing is clear, is that parenting started to be taken more seriously about 25 years ago, which is when the beginnings of the publishing of research and of popular books on parenting started to come out. So hopefully we're seeing the consequences for society of better parenting, or at least more mindful parenting, than there was in previous generations. Now, this is all very good for society, and it's all very nice for families. But you might ask, what does it have to do for businesses? Well, the answer here is several-fold. Firstly, in a study of hundreds of parents, they found that 85% said they would welcome at-work parenting programs. So this would be a tremendously popular thing to do. Rather than worry about upsetting people, far from it, it would be embraced. Secondly, the research shows that there's a up to 4-fold increase in commitment when people believe that their employer is helping with their work-home balance. The spillover from work to home that I referred to earlier would be reduced. That would be in practical things like absenteeism because of child sickness, or becoming late to work because a child was refusing to go to school, or playing up in unhelpful ways. But it would also be spillover in terms of the worry and concern about, is my child coping, or what else should I be doing that I haven't dealt with for them, the lack of self-efficacy. And in addition, if you're, for example, you're a contact center trying to hire great talent in a city or a state or a county where there are other contact centers, the fact that you look after working parents will give you a very clear competitive advantage in the war for talent. There's a thing called emotional salary, which is the non-financial gains you have from working somewhere, and parenting classes would be a very practical, demonstrable way of providing that. An American insurance firm looked at what made up the variance in commitment between the most committed and the least committed employees. And they found that the relationship, the degree to which the employee feels that their work life helps enrich their home life, accounted for pretty much a third of that variance. Now, there are other things that are attached to that, for example, financial security, ability to form relationships, and other things that exist clearly for non-parents too. But for parents, this is usually number one. There's a further benefit, and perhaps this is the greatest benefit of all, is that many of the challenges that businesses have is how do we train people so that they change their behavior and become more effective. Actually, many of the skills of being a good parent are much the same as, for example, being a good manager, or a good customer service advisor, or a good systems programmer, or many other things. So a good parent, for example, will organize family meetings in which we discuss what we might be doing at the weekend or on holiday, and we listen to a range of views and options are shared. A good manager will do the same with their team meeting, helping a child with their homework, not answering the questions for them, but equipping them so they feel able to answer them for themselves, and guiding them is much the same as on-the-job coaching. It's not the apprenticeship model, but it's not we just ask you questions and help you work it out for yourself. It's being the guided hand. It's being there to support. The descriptive praise that I talked about earlier, which is so powerful in terms of affecting child's self-confidence and their behavior and their ability to learn and curiosity and a range of other attributes, is much the same as the 5-star praise that is shown at work, that when it's used it leads almost certainly to either repeating that behavior or something very much like it. We also know that by and large at home and by and large at work, there isn't nearly enough praise in ratio to the amount of constructive feedback or counsel or negative comments. So in both cases, in both domains, it would help to increase this. One-to-one time with each child is proven to have a more positive effect than talking only to a group of children, to all your children together. Each child needs time alone with their mother and ideally also with their father, ideally every day, certainly every 2 or 3 days. And with team members, it's much the same. Maybe it's not quite as frequent, maybe it's once a week or once a fortnight, but still that one-to-one time is important. And just as bedtime routine is important for children, so is meeting cadence or reporting routine important for colleagues, so we know where we stand and what's expected and how to respond to that. Now, changing, as I said earlier, changing habits and changing behavior and building skills at work is notoriously difficult. And so I'll share an example where this approach was used at one level further. It's with Royal Mail, the British mail system, and the challenge here was how do you help supervisors behave in ways that Royal Mail wanted them to, but recognized if they simply asked them to do it, that probably wasn't going to be sufficient. So what they looked at was what are the behaviors or skills that they wanted those frontline managers or supervisors to have, and what was the self-interested element that those people wanted to be better at, just for their own benefit. And I'm going to give you one example which shows the analogy between helping with homework and on-the-job coaching. Here's a grid. You can see across the top the frontline supervisor behaviors. I want customers to do a good job for customers. I want to go the extra mile whenever it's needed. And the particular one that I want to point to here is I help colleagues succeed. Then on the left-hand side, you see the self-interested bit. I'd like to have more energy, more get up and go. I'd like to feel a bit more in control. And the one I want to point to here again is I want to be able to help others. The idea of providing a guiding hand. And what we've done here is help see how the two align, and therefore providing a program, in this case a short bite-sized workshop, on how to help people when they're stuck. People went away and used it at home, predominantly to help their children with homework, but then found it was also really helpful at work. And in fact, we went back 3 months later, 84% had used it at work and 76% had used the techniques at home, in both cases reporting they'd been highly effective. Indeed, the only question was, why on earth is Royal Mail paying for this? The answer, for those who know what was going on behind the scenes, is obvious. So it's very nice to say that's good in theory, and I can understand the value of helping parents become better parents. But what does it look like in practice? And so I'd like to share with you briefly the Parent Gym program. This is a philanthropic program run by and funded by MindGym. Some people sometimes say, is it a not-for-profit? The answer is it's a for loss. It's entirely funded. It's been running now for several years. At the moment, about 350 parents a term take part in the more socially deprived parts of the UK, which means just over 1,000 parents a year are going through it, though there's every intention and hope to accelerate that. So I'll show you briefly how that program works. I'm going to try and lose that arrow from wherever it is. And some pictures of the different magazine covers that act as the structure for this program. It has been a 5-week program. It's moving to become a 6-week program as we continuously improve it. But each week covers a different catch, rules, love, friends and family, learn. And each week is covered by a magazine that will be designed to look like a magazine you might buy off the shelf. Each magazine has within it a whole range of different content of tools and techniques. A particular example, looking at timeouts. What do you do when your child misbehaves, and if your child does this, what you should do, and why it works. In particular, the timeout technique for causing a child to sit and think about what they've done and what that means, and recognize it and come back and apologize for it, and then to recover the situation as if it happened. Not to dwell on it, but to move on. So each magazine is full of, if you like, 20, 30 techniques that are related to the particular theme. Now, if we just handed out magazines, that wouldn't do an enormous amount of good. As we all know, the transfer from written material to application is quite low. So what has been designed is a series of 90-minute workshops covering each topic, looking at what the different exercises might be, and then the participants go away and try the exercise out. At the end of the workshop, they say, which of the 5 or so key missions am I going to actually apply? And then they come back a week later and say, well, I tried it, and this is what happened. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. One mother talked about silent listening. Her daughter, previously been Delight, had become quite difficult after the birth of a second child. And so rather than trying to explain it, she just asked her daughter to talk and listen, and the daughter shared many of her concerns and worries. And rather than saying things like, well, he's only a baby and he loves you too, she just kept quiet. And the daughter carried on talking. And she said that after a while, she just listened, made no comment, and then moved on to another subject. And the relations between the daughter and daughter's behavior improved considerably after that. Similar technique by another mother was used to help when her son came back from school. So how was school? Fine. Did you do anything? No. And so she started to ask questions of what was your favorite this or favorite that, and what happened at particular times and days and moments and so forth, and discovered a whole range of friendships and challenges and excitements and fears that you wouldn't have found otherwise. So by doing this, not only do people have a chance to have a go and then be witnessed for what happened, but they start to learn from each other. And so those of you who are in the learning world will know that learning transfer is far greatest when the same content is distributed over time. In fact, get a half a standard deviation greater in terms of application. And so what this journey managed to help parents do was to see how they could practice it and learn from others. But it also gave them that very important self-confidence. I'm struggling with this, and so is someone just like me. Now, at the moment, this program is run in schools for parents in primary schools. But there's every reason why it could be, no reason why it couldn't be run, and every reason why it could be run in organizations for employees at lunchtime and so forth. And whenever we do these webinars, we tend to get one of two concerns, often both of them. The first is, tell me practically what could you do? It was all very nice in theory, but how can I actually do something? And the second was, you tried to sell to me. And I'm afraid it's very hard not to do one or other of those, and sometimes we end up falling between the two and doing both. I'm going to try and get it right and offer you, very simply, the data behind the Parent Gym success and a practical way that you could put this into practice in your organization. The good news is that 2 universities have assessed this and 6 independent professors, and we found in the graph you'll see the difference between parents' reaction self-report after the program versus before. We've also gone back 3 months later and found similar levels of affect of people actually putting this into practice. So 67% feeling more confident about discipline, 63% feeling more confident about how to deal with the pressures of being a parent, 62% feeling more in control, which is a very important part of reducing that stress or worry about being a parent. And you can read some of the quotes that float around this chart about the kinds of things that parents say about themselves. Now, we've also seen reactions in terms of child behavior, but for the moment, because we're talking about employees and working parents, we've chosen to focus on the impact on the parents themselves and how they feel as parents. And so the question out to those who are interested and intrigued by this challenge and who want to engage or re-engage people who were once very engaged but now, since becoming parents, have become less so, is to try a trial. It's 2 hours a week for 6 weeks. You can have up to 20 parents per program. It's ready to start immediately. It's grounded in science. It's practical. It's proven to work. It's reasonably priced, and even more important than that, all the profits go to the philanthropic program of Parent Gym. So I hope that's given you a brief overview of what it's like to be a working parent, the nature of that stress, the impact that has on work, and what employers can do above and beyond the crashes and the flexi work time by providing support that helps parents become more confident as parents, that helps parents become more capable as parents, but as a result also helps them become more confident and capable at work too. I thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we look forward to speaking and you joining future webinars from the Mind Gym. With best wishes, goodbye.